Hi, everybody. I'm Ross the Boss, and welcome to opening week, Major League Baseball. Starting this week, Kasey Scheinfeld. Let me welcome my co-host, Flat to the Bone,
Glad to the
Kasey
bone.
Scheinfeld. Kasey,
That's
welcome to the party, pal.
it's time to get your peanuts, right?
Time to get your peanuts. I'm excited.
Cold beer
Opening day's Friday. Um,
Thursday.
all the opening day pitchers are announced. We'll go through all of that stuff. We'll go through every team today, Kasey, and we'll talk about each player I feel you should watch out for on each team who I feel is going to have a huge fantasy impact. And you'll make your comments. But before we get started, I want to talk about college basketball and about the Creighton San Diego State game and the last second foul they called to ruin the game. I was excited for overtime. They haven't been calling fouls this whole tournament. All of a sudden, this ref calls a tic-tac foul, and it ruined the game. I mean, I really feel these refs are on the take. What's your take on that game? I know you saw it.
I watched it. It was a soft foul, that's for sure. But look, it's the greatest weekend of the year so far. You got opening weekend of baseball and the Final Four happening at once. I mean, I think it's pretty. I'm hoping for an FAU UConn final. We'll see what
Yeah, I'm
happens.
rooting for FAU. I mean, I had to look up where that school's at. It's in Boca Raton, Florida, 2 miles from the ocean. It's like it's a very small school. It's like under 5,000 kids, I think. And it just amazes me how a program like that's in the Final Four.
I know it's fun to watch. So
I mean, it's been so exciting, and I'm excited. Opening day Friday, and we have
Thursday.
a full slate of.
Thursday, the Yankees play San Francisco on Thursday.
Hold on, Thursday. On Thursday, excuse me, I meant Thursday. I'm on the wrong date. Is that funny?
It's
Uh,
okay.
so we're talking about Thursday. I was looking on the wrong day. Excuse me, folks. So it's Wednesday. It's Thursday, March 30th. That's opening day. We got a full slate of stuff going on. And before we get started, let's talk about some of the big roster moves that have been done the past week. I'll start with your Yankees first. Let's talk about that shortstop that
Oh,
made the
Anthony
roster.
Volpe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been rooting for him obviously all along. I drafted him in our last league that we're in together with my big pick there. Uh hey, he earned it. He has over a 1,000 OPS in spring, got 5 stolen bases, a couple home runs. He's been knocking in runs, batting over 300. He is the youngest Yankee to debut since who?
Lou
Derek
Gehrig.
Jeter. Derek Jeter.
Jeter.
He's
Okay.
50 days older than Derek Jeter was, I think, when Derek Jeter debuted. I saw a stat for the youngest 5 to debut for the Yankees. I didn't recognize one of the names, but the other ones you'll probably know. Mickey Mantle.
Never heard
Uh,
of him.
right.
Yeah.
Never heard of
Mickey
him.
Mantle.
Anthony Volpe, Derek Jeter, and Willie Randolph in
Willie
1970.
Randolph. All great ball players.
Yeah.
Even though Willie never made the Hall of Fame because he just didn't get enough hits, but I still love him. Unbelievable
Yeah.
player. But I mean, your Yankees. I mean, I think Torres could be traded, and I think you have another guy that can take Torres'
Yeah.
spot.
Well, I think if they trade Torres, they might move Volpe over to second and give Oswaldo Peraza the shortstop job because Peraza is the better defender.
Okay,
And
that's why I'm asking you.
honestly, for me as a Volpe owner, that's only a boost to his fantasy value since we're talking fantasy sports because what are the 2 thinnest positions but second base and third base? So if you can slide him into your second base spot, it makes him even more valuable. So
I mean, again, huge pickup. And let's talk about St. Louis, 20-year-old phenom.
your boy.
Well, I drafted him. It's funny. I thought Kasey, when we were doing that draft, I thought he would go earlier, and you and I discussed it.
Yeah, I
And
didn't think I didn't think either of them would be available when
I didn't either. And I saw him sitting there, and I'm like, why isn't I think he's gonna make the roster. You and I talked about it,
Yeah.
and we're talking about
Jordan Walker.
Jordan Walker, 6'7" outfielder, naturally a third baseman.
I got to be honest, Ross, I nearly picked him when I picked instead of Volpe because there was a better chance of Volpe making it back to me. I knew Walker wouldn't, and I was praying to get both, but I assumed somebody else was going to take Volpe. And I'm a Yankee guy. When it comes to fantasy sports, you got to love your players. So, especially in a keeper league like we're in.
Oh,
So
I
I'm the
agree.
guy I would be happier to root
you did
for.
not make any. I mean, So if you had to compare Volpe to Walker, who do you think has a better ceiling, and who do you think is going to have a better year?
I honestly think Walker has a higher ceiling. I got to be honest, because of the power. Like, this is a guy who can. I think Volpe can be a 30 guy, and I believe that he's a power speed guy who can get on base. I think Walker plays. He qualifies at third base. Within the first week of the season, he's going to play in the outfield. Those are much more valuable positions right now in fantasy. And I think my only concern with Walker is he's 6'7", and prior to like the Aaron Judges of the world, we don't see a lot of guys that tall maintain a lot of success. Their batting average can skyrocket because of the difficulty in covering that entire strike zone. That's my biggest fear about him. Whereas Volpe has been compared more to a Dustin Pedroia, like a littler guy who has a great hit tool. Only Volpe has more speed. And look, Pedroia was an AL MVP, and Pedroia was he could hit 30 bombs. So I don't mind that comparison, but I think Walker, if he combines, if he's Aaron Judge with even more speed, which is kind of what they're saying his ceiling is, that's not a fair.
I'm excited. I've been getting offers on him ever since he's been announced and made the roster. Dan's trying to trade me Trout and somebody else for Garcia and Walker. Excuse me, I turned it down. I want to see Walker play for a few weeks. I want to see what this guy's about.
And look, I think in a redraft league, that's an exceptional offer for you to get the guaranteed 40 home runs, 100 plus RBIs, 300 batting average, maybe not the steals you'd get. But in a keeper league, I love Mike Trout. To me, he's still one of the 3 or 4 best players in baseball. He could run if he wanted to. He chooses not to. But he's 30. And
no, he's 32. Kasey's 32.
Is he 32? Okay.
32,
and Walker is 20. And you're looking 2, 3, 4 years down the line that Walker could be Trout for 6, 7, or 8 years straight. So it's a smart decline on your part to say no to that trade. In a redraft league, I would have told you.
Totally different in redraft league. I just need some youngsters on my team. I'm getting a lot of aging players, so I think getting the youth movement can only help. Let's talk opening day. It's Thursday. The first game's at 1:00 your time, 10:00 here. The first game let's talk about is Atlanta, and the Atlanta Braves are playing the Nationals in Washington, D.C. It's Fried against Corbin. Max Fried's getting the call as the starting opening day pitcher, which makes sense. I think Fried deserves that. Even though the pitching for Atlanta is good. I mean, they have some really good aces on their team, but I think Max Fried is the anchor of the team. And if I had to take one player, if you had to take one player from Atlanta, I guess I would take.
It's hard. I
would take Austin Riley. I think Austin Riley had a huge year last year, and I think he's a safer bet. But I know who you love, and why don't you tell the audience?
Oh no, I'm not going to take who you think.
What? No?
Michael Harris the second, man. He would be the
Michael
guy.
Harris. Thank God you said the second, because I thought you were talking about his dad.
Not his dad. I like his
dad.
Okay,
I was very confused. Okay, good.
Michael, I think. I told you I think Ronald Acuna is maybe the best fantasy player in baseball, but he is coming off a disappointing year. I would like to see it for a week or two before I start, riding that momentum. To me, he has to earn my favorite player in that lineup moniker there. Michael Harris, to me, offers almost every bit of Ronald Acuna Jr. Austin Riley, I love. I wouldn't blame you for taking him. I like the steals and runs scored aspect of Michael Harris there. But Max Fried,
listen, Atlanta's loaded, Kasey.
Max Fried might be my top choice because this guy is an ERA champ waiting to happen who has a low whip. He only gets knocked because he doesn't have the 11 Ks per 9 that some of the fantasy aces like Spencer Strider would be more exciting to watch.
Yeah, but look at the innings pitch Spencer has. I mean, they just don't let him pitch that much. I mean, that's
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 because
his big downfall.
the
And
problem is when you strike out 11 batters in 5 innings or 6 innings, you have to throw a lot of pitches to strike out
Yeah.
that many batters. And so his numbers climb up, whereas Max is the master of inducing weak contact. And he's got a great defense behind him, you know.
No,
And so
Maxwell his ERA last year was kind of high. I think it was 3.66.
Max
Don't
Fried,
quote me, but I think so. I think let's see if I'm right. I don't
I'll
have the
check
stats
right
in front
now.
of me, but this is just all
Nope,
my
last
research.
year was 2.48 ERA.
2.8. Okay, I think I'm thinking about a different Atlanta pitcher. But Max Fried, you can't go wrong. Again, he's part of the Southern California pitchers that all come out of here. It's unbelievable. I think Max Fried, this could be his year. You're 100% right. I think he can even win the Cy Young. Let's talk about the Washington Nationals. My player I like he's 20. I think he's 22 years old. J.J. Abrams, the shortstop for them.
CJ.
Excuse me. J.J. Abrams is the director. Isn't that funny? I think that's funny. So we'll call him J.J. Abrams the rest of the. We'll call him J.J. Abrams the rest of the year now because I messed up.
There you go.
But CJ, I think he's a phenom. I think he's really good. I think he'll have a good year in Washington, even though they don't really have much around him. But who's your favorite fantasy player on the Nationals?
That's hard.
You got to take one player.
If I have to pick one, I like CJ Abrams.
That's
I'm
good.
I'm probably going to go with Joey Meneses. The first baseman.
He's older.
DH. He's older,
it's a great story. I love how he was in the minors for years and he finally got his break. I love it.
I don't love anybody, but I mean, Dominic Smith could shock some people at first base there when he's given a chance. He had a good year in New York a few years ago when he was with the Mets, but they never gave him regular playing time. So I'm hoping he starts to kind of flex a little bit now that he's going to get regular playing time. But I'm going to avoid Washington for the most part from a fantasy.
I'm saying you got to pick one. I know you're avoiding. I'm avoiding. Of course, we're all avoiding.
So for Monday, I'm going to pick Meneses.
I love it. Okay,
for Thursday. I mean,
the Giants are in New York to start the season. The Giants are starting Mr. Webb, who, as you know, I'm a big fan of, and Garrett Cole's going for the Yankees. For the Giants, that lineup is like a bunch of no names. I wish I could tell you who I really love, but there's nobody I love. But if I have to take one fantasy guy on that team, I guess it would be Jock Peterson as a hitter, and in pitching, I like Webb because he's on my team.
Sure.
But I guess it would be Jock, even though he doesn't play every day, because if it's a left-handed pitcher, he kind of sits once in a while.
Yeah, he'll go against.
But
Cole.
Again, the Giants have a very weak offensive machine in San Francisco this year. Who's your favorite fantasy player?
I think somebody who's going to surprise a lot of people this year in fantasy is Michael Conforto. Again, this guy's just a couple years away. I seem to be picking ex-Mets, but he's a 30 home run guy. Now, Pac-Bell, is it still Pac-Bell? What's it called now? In
Pac-Bell's good. We all know what you're talking about. Keep going.
It's as we know, incredibly difficult for left-handed power, but this guy is still in Yankee Stadium. It's a great for left-handed power. And Garrett Cole can leave the ball up. So I will likely take him to be the most productive of the Giants hitters. And I think he could hit 30 home runs this year.
Yeah. And let's talk Yankees. I mean, Aaron Judge, I don't have to explain myself. Who's your favorite Yankee fantasy-wise?
Well, I think everybody could take Aaron Judge. Of course, he's going to be the favorite to do the most damage. I'm going to pick Anthony Rizzo. I'm going to take.
Love it.
I think Rizzo is going to be one of those, but by the end of the year, he's probably going to be one of those late round gems, those late round steals, because yes, he's only going to play 115 to 120 games because of his back. He's going to have to sit for a lot, but even of those 120 games in Yankee Stadium, he can hit you 35 home runs and he can drive in close to 100 runs. And he can, people forget that he used to be a base stealer. He can even chip in 8 to 10 steals at first base. So I like him because everybody worries about Judge. Rizzo will get pitches to hit, and early in the season, he's going to be healthy and fresh. I think he'll take advantage.
I like Rizzo too. There's no argument. Let's talk about Baltimore. Is at Boston. Baltimore really has a strong team. I like Baltimore this year. As I said, I think Cedric Mullins is going to lead the league in stolen bases with at least 45 to 50. I think he'll hit between 25 and 30 home runs. My fantasy impact player for Baltimore. They have a lot of impact people, but I got to pick one.
Nice players, yeah.
It's going to be said. And who's your pick for Baltimore?
For Baltimore in Boston, I'm going to take Ryan Mountcastle.
It's not in Boston. This is for the whole season, Kasey Scheinfeld.
Oh, you mean for the whole season? I thought you meant for this weekend. Okay,
no,
for the
I'm
whole
just talking
season.
About the whole season.
I think
person's the most.
I think Adley Rutschman's going to end up the
That's
top-rated one or two catcher in the league, so I'm going to take him.
Adley's should have a big year. He got a taste of Major League Baseball last year. I agree. The Red Sox, who are rejuvenated after watching the WBC. I love the Japanese guy they picked up. Can you say it for me? Yoshida. I like him. He's the guy I think is going to have the most fantasy impact for the Red Sox. Who's your person?
I think the steal of the Red Sox, and I think he's going to stay healthy this season, is Chris Sale.
Now, they already said he's only pitching 5 innings.
But if he gives you 30 starts at 5 innings, 150 innings, he can strike out 225 batters. And
so Chris Sale, listen, I hope he comes back. I hope his arm's ready to go because I love when he pitched before he got hurt. I loved him. So no
I'm hoping,
we'll see what happens. So Milwaukee Brewers are in Chicago, Wrigley Field. It's going to be cold there, Case. But regardless, I mean, Milwaukee, their hitting to me is pretty strong this year. I like this guy who's playing center field for them is Garrett Mitchell. I like him. He gets no press. No one talks about him. He's a great defender. People are worried about his hitting. I'm not worried about his hitting. I like him fantasy-wise just because he's kind of a no-name, and you can pick him up right now probably on waivers. Who do you like in Milwaukee?
You can get him pretty cheap, I like 2 guys. I like Rowdy Tellez, the first baseman. I think
love him. Softball player. Love it.
He does. He looks like he plays in your beer league, but he just hits bombs. He's not going to hit for a high average, 235, 240, but that doesn't kill you. And I do think Devin Williams is going to be the best closer in baseball this year.
God, did you see his stuff in the WBC?
His changeup is unhittable.
I mean, he's my number 1 reliever right now in
Major
League Baseball.
I love that guy. So
I do too. That's a good one. That's a great one. So let's talk about the Cubs. Very shallow. I like Swanson, their shortstop. They paid him a lot of money. I feel he'll come through. He'll have a good year, especially when it gets warmer in Chicago. The ball will be flying out of there. Who do you like in Chicago?
People constantly underestimate Jameson Taillon. This guy over the last 4 years has like a 1.15 whip. He's a whip monster. He's not a big strikeout guy, but I think he's going to have a good year. I also like Nico Horner. I think Nico Horner is underrated too as a second baseman. Not going to give you a lot of pop, maybe 12 to 15 home runs, but he's going to steal you 25 to 30 bags and get on base a lot. So I am going with those 2 players.
But again, fantasy owners, don't pick up too many Cubs.
That's really another. There's a few.
I'm not really too high on their pitching staff.
The Cubs, Oakland. You kind of.
We'll get there. Detroit is playing in Tampa. That's a 12-10 start, so it's a 3-10 start for you. I'm going to take my ASU guy, Spencer Torkelson. I'll take him. Number 1 pick out of Arizona State a couple years ago. I think he'll have a good year this year. I think he had his taste. I also like Riley Green, but I'm taking the ESU player. Case, who do you like in the Tigers?
I like Riley Green. I like the power speed guys. So if you can give me both, I'm going to take him. And Riley Green, I'm hoping he's one of those post-hype sleepers. He was so hyped up last year, had a lot of helium and was picked early in drafts and disappointed. But I'm hoping he takes kind of that. I learned a lot about myself and applied it in the offseason, and he's a better player this year. But again, Detroit's another one of those lineups where there's not too many guys that you want to run out and get.
Let's talk Tampa Bay. I mean, we all know that, Randy is the top dog there, but the first baseman they have is Ramirez. He can hit.
Yeah.
And I like this guy, and fantasy wise, you probably can pick him up on your team if you need a first baseman. I probably don't, but utility too. I like Ramirez. I'm going to take him as my fantasy impact player. Who's your guy in Tampa?
That's a great pick. I mean, the low hanging fruit is Shane McClanahan or somebody like that. But I'm going to take Brandon Lau, the second baseman. He's only he was hurt last year, but he's a few years off. He's only like 2.5 years away from being a 30+ homer second baseman. He's healthy this year. His back is doing better from all accounts, from what I've read. And here's somebody who isn't kind of rated in those top 5 or 6 second basemen. It's a shallow position. If you can snag Brandon Lau in the middle to late rounds, I think you'll be really happy with him.
Let's talk. The next game is the Phillies are in Texas. As we know, the ball loves to fly in Texas. Everything's big in Texas. All the home runs, everything. The Phillies have a very strong offensive team. I'm not going to go for some weird pick. I'll just say Trey Turner. Because I feel he can be the MVP this year.
I think he's going to hit 30 home runs and steal 60 bags. It's sad when you still can say they have it says something when they still have a strong lineup, and you're talking about Bryce Harper could be out until June, and
I say May. I think May. They didn't put him on the 60-day. I think he's going to come back earlier, which is good for you.
I hope you're right, because I have him in my keeper league.
I say before May 15th.
I am praying you're right. Trey Turner's the easy choice. I'll say Kyle Schwarber, just because he's turned into a professional hitter. He could hit 50 home runs pretty easy this year.
Does he have a neck? I mean, I look at him.
I don't think so.
I don't think he has a neck.
I think his whole body just rotates around his chin.
Neck. And let's go to the Texas Rangers and improve Texas Rangers. McGroom, starting is DeGrom for Texas.
I know.
He's the opening day starter, which is kind of cool. If he can stay healthy, I think he can have a good year. But in Texas, I like Garcia, the outfielder. I feel he'll be at least a 2020 guy. I think if he can hit for average, hopefully he can hit around 280. I think he'll have the most impact fantasy wise. Who's your Texas guy?
I'm going to go by position scarcity and say Marcus Semien, another power speed guy.
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
At second base. Now you'll have to pull the trigger on early to get him, but a power speed guy at second base in that ballpark. The lineup only got deeper for him. He struggled in the first month and a half of the season, and his number, he was batting in the low ones, like low 100 something. So his final numbers don't look great, but it meant he had to bat like 290 the last 3 months of the season. So from like the middle of May until the end of the season, he was a top 3 second baseman. And I think,
and remember, folks, like what Kasey just said is Marcus Semien started out really slow, and there are players that do that. So when these players start slow, that's when you can scoop in and get them at a low rate. People are not happy with their top stars not playing well. They want to dump them. So that's when you got to play manager and try to trade and get some of these guys that are not hitting, because they're going to pick it up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, you want to keep your eye on Josh Jung, because this guy in Texas has like limitless power potential, but you have to see him do it, because he struck out like 40% of his at-bats last year. But if he shows you he figured it out, because he has the track record in the minors, he's somebody to scoop up if he's on your waiver wire, to try to trade for if the other owner doesn't know what he has.
And Kasey, this the pitching matchup in Texas. It's Nola against DeGrom. That's a great matchup.
I know. Jacob DeGrom leaves the Mets and ends up having to start his first game against the Phillies anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The Mets are playing the Marlins in Florida. Max Scherzer is going against the Cy Young winner, Sandy. Say it for me.
Alcantara.
Sounds like so in the Mets. I mean, Pete Alonso to me is the fantasy impact player in the Mets. Period.
Yeah,
but
that's
you might have another idea.
No, he's the best fantasy player on the Mets. I don't think that's Verlander, Scherzer. How do you count against those two? But
we pick one. My fantasy impact player for the Mets is Pete Alonso.
Yeah, I think he's going to lead the league in home runs. I said that a few weeks ago. I think he's going to hit the most home runs in New York and win the NL MVP. So
I love it.
Not to say Pete Alonso.
And then for the Marlins, I'm going to say Brian De La Cruz, or Jorge Solar. Solar's joined the Marlins, so I like this De La Cruz. De La Cruz, I feel, is going to have a breakout season. He has the most power of any outfielder the Marlins have.
Yeah.
I know there's other guys on the team that I like too, but I like De La Cruz. I'm just gonna throw it out there because he's not that well known. Who do you
Yeah.
like?
Well, I mean, they moved Jazz Chisholm to the outfield to try to
Center
keep him
field.
healthier.
He's a starting
To
center
keep him
fielder.
to
I like
keep him
Jazz a lot too.
healthier. And
Yeah.
he's a power speed guy. Defensively, I think Edward Cabrera is this guy a starter that nobody's talking about. Could be the sleeper of that rotation. Everybody knows Alcantara. Jesus Luzardo kind of broke out last year. If he can stay healthy, he can be dynamic too. But their number 3 starter, Edward Cabrera, is a strikeout machine also. And Miami, just if you look at the last 5 or 6 years, just turn out like starter after starter after starter. I think this guy's the next one.
Listen, Toronto is playing a National League team. They're playing St. Louis to start the season. Alek Manoah is going for Toronto, and Monokulas, the Greek pitcher,
Miles Michaelis.
So Toronto, I'm going to say it because you're with me on the show. Vlad to the bone. Vladimir Guerrero is the number 1 impact player. But Bo Bichette, I mean, they have a lot of weapons offensively. They really do. I mean, they're loaded. Team. I mean, they're loaded. So mine's guy, I think Guerrero can be the AL MVP unless Judge has the same year he had last year.
I think Ohtani's probably the favorite in the AL because of his
I'm going against the grain.
But I agree with you. Vladimir Guerrero is the safest pick. I'm going to go with a depth pick that people aren't thinking about. It was a low, not very well notarized or publicized signing of Brandon Belt. Went to the Toronto this year from San Francisco. I think this guy, he's going to DH more than anything. If he stays healthy, he's going to enjoy the confines of
Toronto
compared to the spacious Giants stadium.
The only thing worried about Belt is this. I don't know if he'll play every day because he bats lefty.
Right.
I hope I'm wrong, but I like Brandon Belt, but I don't know if he'll play every day.
But I think he's somebody you can probably get off waiver wires right now if you're a Hoskins owner and you're looking for a first baseman. Those are the types of players I think he could have a huge impact. I'm a big Kevin Gossman fan. I think he's going to be dynamite again this year too. Toronto could win the AL East. As much as I'm a Yankees fan, that team is loaded and fun.
They are, and if you look at their pitching and hitting, both positions are.
And Jordan Romano is one of the best closers in baseball right now.
Yeah, Jordan Romano. But let's talk the Cardinals, one of my hated teams. I'm going to stick with the young phenom. I'm going to take Jordan Walker. I know they have Nolan at third. I mean, they have some great players on the team. Goldschmidt, who's the MVP in the National League. I mean, they have some great players. Let's go with the youth. I think everybody expects Goldschmidt and all these other guys to have good years. They don't know what to expect from this rookie. They have a 20-year-old rookie. They have no idea. So I'll take Jordan Walker. Who's your number 1?
I love Jordan Walker. I'm going to take. It's interesting. St. Louis is one of those teams where the sum is greater than its parts. I feel like, like Goldschmidt looked bad in the WBC, but we know he's going to bat 300 and hit 30 home runs. Arenado's going to hit 30 home runs and drive in 120 runs. I'm going to take Brendan Donovan because for fantasy purposes, he plays like 4 positions. And guess who's on base all those times that Goldschmidt and Arenado hit those home runs or driving those runs? It's Brendan Donovan, stealing bases and scoring runs. And so I think at second base, and he qualifies everywhere else, to be at the top of that lineup makes him the fantasy impact player this year for the Cardinals.
Love it. Colorado Rockies are in San Diego. Thank God, because Colorado, it's like 20 degrees there. Happy they're not like starting the season.
I know. Usually they have a snow out.
Some genius scheduler schedules the opening day in Colorado and Denver. It's like the dumbest thing I've heard in my life. So Colorado Rockies, CJ Cron to me is the number 1 fantasy impact guy. I won't take any pitchers. I like Bard. I think Bard he'll keep his job the whole season. So save wise, he'll be the save specialist for Colorado. But CJ Cron to me will have 30 home runs and 110 RBIs. Who's your fantasy guy in Colorado?
I'm gonna name 2. One, I think Ryan McMahon, the second baseman, can be fantasy impactful. But I'm gonna name somebody nobody's probably Well, I shouldn't say nobody's drafted.
Can I guess? Can I guess?
Go ahead.
It's the rookie shortstop Tovar.
No, although I love that guy. He's a power speed shortstop. But
this guy could be. He was the number 1 prospect last year. I mean, this guy's the real deal. So who's your guy? I'm curious now.
His name is Elahoris Montero. third baseman. He's going to be the starting third baseman for them this year.
Okay.
He's going to get some at bats poached by Mike Moustakas, but Moustakas, I don't think, is the type of player who's going to keep this guy on the bench unless Moustakas is hitting bombs and playing well. But I mean, 5 home runs, 12 RBIs, a 306 batting average in the preseason. He's really just crushing the ball right now. And so I'm going to pick somebody nobody's heard of, and third base is a thin position. So
I love it. I mean, this is somebody, guys, you can pick up and stash,
right,
and have on your bench, and people are going to say, "I want to pick this guy up," and no, Kasey has him. So these are stash people that you should think about picking up instead of having some average player on your bench that you'll probably never play. Pick up some of these guys we're mentioning that no one's ever heard of, because you never know. They got to start somewhere. And all these guys are in Major League Baseball, so you never know what can happen. Let's talk about the Padres. I mean, they're loaded. Where do I start? I'll make the safe bet. I'll say Juan Soto. I think Juan Soto took a little while to get adjusted in San Diego. I think he'll have a monster year this year. I like Juan Soto. Case, who do you like in San Diego?
Yeah, I think, to me, he's top 3 in that MVP voting also. I'll go on the other side of the game, and I'm going to take Blake Snell. I think Blake Snell figured it out the second half of the season. If you look at his stats from the beginning of the season to the last month or two, as long as they let him go 6 or more innings, Tampa Bay held him back. He pitched great for Tampa Bay. They pulled him out of the World Series game you were at. You can talk about that all day. But Blake Snell has elite stuff and can strike anybody out. And he's left-handed. Like those things together, if he stays healthy, I think he's going to be a top 5 pitcher this year.
I'm not arguing. The White Sox are playing the world champion Houston Astros. Dylan Cease, who our colleague Dan Ratner is in love with, versus Flamber Valdez, who I like a lot.
Framber is great, yeah.
If you look at his stats, like all his pitching stats, his whips and all that stuff, insane. I mean, this guy gets no press. No one knows who he is except the real baseball people. So the White Sox beat George Jetson, his son Eloy Jimenez.
Eloy,
but
Elroy was the Jetsons, but it's Eloy.
I had to call him Elroy just because of Jetsons.
No, I get it.
I sing the song. I think everybody talked about this guy when he came up, how he's the next big thing. He got hurt. He got hurt again, but this guy shows so much power, and I think he'll bring it all together this year. I love this guy. I think he'll have a big year fantasy-wise. Who's your White Sox?
Yeah, I'm going to name 2 again. I'm going to name Andrew Vaughn, the first baseman.
Love it.
I think he could actually match the production lost by Jose Abreu in their lineup, which is,
and he's an outfielder too, just in case.
And he qualifies an outfielder.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to name somebody who people haven't talked about, and that's Oscar Colas, the Cuban, who's going to be a rookie this year. He's going to play right field, most likely opening day. This is another guy who's a professional hitter, who a lot of people aren't talking about, who you can get later in the draft, and he can match some of those higher outfield picks in terms of power, production, and average. So Oscar Colas in right field and Andrew Vaughn at first base, and Vaughn qualifies in the outfield as well.
Houston Astros. I'm going to, I mean,
you could throw a dart and
I mean, I'll say somebody that dropped a lot in the draft in fantasy wise is Alex Bregman. He was hurt last year. I think he'll bring it all together this year. I think he's in the middle of that lineup. I feel he's going to have a great season. I'll take Alex Bregman. But again, like you said, there's like 4 or 5 guys. Remember, Altuve's out for the first 3 months. So
sure. And their pitching staff. And you can go 5 starters deep. And
I mean, their pitching is, I mean, Houston is loaded. I mean,
yeah, Houston tanked and then drafted really well. But I'm going to take somebody they just signed this year and somebody who I just mentioned when I talked about the White Sox. I think Jose Abreu is going to freaking love playing in Houston in that lineup, being in the heart of that lineup with those Crawford boxes in left field. You know, he's going to start pulling the ball a little bit more, and you literally could see 40 home runs, 130 RBIs out of this guy if he stays healthy. He's that good.
I think he'll lead the National American League in RBIs. I think that's a great pick. I mean, I like him too. I just but
again, we could choose anybody. We didn't talk about Pena. We didn't talk about
I said one.
I know. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just get so excited.
Angels are playing this game. Can you imagine? I'm just curious. How many people do you think will be this opening day in Oakland?
At Oakland,
The Angels are playing Oakland. The Angels are playing Otani's their starter, which is a great opening start. The Angels are starting Mueller, Muller.
Yep.
I've never heard of this guy. I mean, I remember there was a Mueller that pitched back in the 90s, but
Bueller.
Never heard of Mueller. I mean, I've seen his name, but I never seen him pitch. The Angels, I mean, I'll just say Otani. There's no one else. I mean, there's Trout. There's some other players, but just Otani's a fantasy impact player in the Angels. Who's your guy?
I think Reed Detmers is the guy this year.
You like Reed?
I think, he was a top prospect. He threw a no-hitter last year, and he was dominant in the spring after spending the winter with Driveline. And whenever you hear a pitcher goes to Driveline, he gained 2 miles an hour, added a new pitch to his arsenal, a left-handed pitcher. I think he and Otani are going to end up being number 1 and 2 in the starting rotation for them. And Detmers is somebody you can get 7 rounds later than obviously Otani, or 8 rounds later.
10 rounds, yeah.
And he could throw 170 innings, strike out 190 guys, have a decent whip and ERA. The wins, it depends, because let's be honest, the Angels aren't exactly a team that strikes fear. Now, if Rendon stays healthy, which he hasn't in a couple of years, he could be an impact player as well.
I drafted Rendon in our draft. So I'm sure you saw that. And I feel they paid him a lot of money. And he showed a lot of promise in Washington when he played there. I think he'd be comeback player of the year. How about that? I'm throwing that out there right now, Kasey Scheinfeld.
If he stays healthy, that's a very good bet.
Oakland, I was going to say Seth Brown. I'm not saying Seth Brown because he's no clown, but Ramon
Laureano.
I know he only had like 14 home runs last year. I know his average wasn't that great, but I think he'll bring it together this year. I think ceiling-wise and fantasy impact-wise, he's the guy to take in Oakland. Who's your person?
Well, Estieri Ruiz, I've talked about since, I don't know, probably July of last year. He's going to get every day at bats in Oakland. He could lead the league in steals if he can get on first base. He's either going to be like, I don't know, Vince Coleman, or he's going to be Billy Hamilton. And there's really nowhere in between for him. If he can bat 260, get on base at above a 325, 340 clip, he could easily steal 60 bases. If he can't, he could also just be a forever pinch runner. So I'm going to say Shane Langoliers, the catcher, because this is a guy who's a top prospect, and catcher is just as thin as some of those other positions. So from a fantasy perspective, any production out of him, if he hits like he did in the minors, he could be the best impact player from Oakland.
Remember, fantasy impact at positions, catcher only was 11%. So you're 100% right, Kasey Scheinfeld. The Cleveland Guardians are playing at 7:10 p.m. my time, so 10 o'clock your time. Great matchup pitching. Shane Bieber versus Luis Castilla.
Yeah.
Great. So Cleveland Indians, my fantasy player, Ramirez at third base. There's no one else. I mean,
Andres Jimenez, I will take at second base as another impactful player.
Okay. He just signed that big contract today. Too,
yeah.
Jimenez.
7 years, I think. Yeah.
7 years, $107 million. But, again, Ramirez is top 5 fantasy pick, very consistent hitting, home runs, RBIs. The guy's a monster. I don't know what else to say. Seattle Mariners to me are the most dynamic, exciting team in Major League Baseball today.
Wow.
I say that because I love their pitching staff. I like their bullpen. I love their whole, all their hitters. They're just all studs. And Rodriguez in the outfield is another top 5 fantasy pick. So if I had to pick one player, again, they have some really, like Suarez. I know he doesn't hit for average, but this guy hits home runs and RBIs. He's a monster. I'm going to take Rodriguez. He's just a monster.
Yeah.
I can't argue with anybody else, but I love Seattle's team. I think they can give Houston a lot of problems this year in that division. I'm excited for that team to watch. It's going to be great.
And that's obviously the safest, I think, pick. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Jared Kelenic,
Love
the
it.
left fielder, the post type. He struggled mightily his first.
What did he hit last year? I think he hit my weight.
He might have hit. No, he hit below our weight. He hit 141.
Okay. He hit Dan Ratner's weight. Got it.
Yeah. He
Dan
hit my
son's
weight.
He's 6'4". He doesn't weigh 140 pounds. Trust me.
He hit my son's weight, I think. But
your son was a star soccer player.
I mean, this guy was it. He was the reason the Mariners were willing to part with Edwin Diaz in that trade and felt they won the trade. This guy has talent at every level. I'm hoping he figured it out. He did really well this spring, and I'm hoping it translates because he and Julio Rodriguez are very similar as players. And if they're both playing up to their potential, that lineup is, like you said, as fun to watch as it gets.
The Diamondbacks are at Dodger Stadium. It's going to rain all day tomorrow and Wednesday, and it should rain a little bit on Thursday. So hopefully they get all the water out of there. Hopefully they can play, which I'm sure they will because it's 2023. I'm sure they'll figure out how to get the water out of there. So it's Zach Gallen, who I love fantasy-wise. I feel he'll have a great year for Arizona, versus Julio Reyes, who I feel is up there for the Cy Young consideration this year in the National League. Arizona Diamondback-wise, I guess I'll go with the rookie Carroll. I mean, there's a few other McCarthy I like, but Carroll's the main guy. Who else do you like in Arizona?
I like Christian Walker. Like I said, you've been a big fan of him. And
I love Christian Walker.
Last week I talked about how his stats translated like almost equally to Matt Olson, who's drafted routinely as a top 6 or 7 first baseman, and Christian Walker's not even in the top 12 or 14.
No.
So I think Christian Walker, pound for pound or value for pick, is probably going to be the most impactful one because Corbin Carroll has a lot of press and praise, and so he's going to have to be drafted pretty early. So I would say either Zach Gallen or Christian Walker.
And then for the Dodgers, it's all about Mookie Betts. Who's your person in Los Angeles?
Mookie Betts is the best player, easily on the
Fantasy
Dodgers.
Impact. Casey Scheinfeld. Fantasy Impact.
Fantasy Impact. Betts. I am going to say Miguel Vargas.
Untested rookie. I mean, he's going to play second base. He's going to be the everyday second baseman in Los Angeles. Right
and
now,
he hasn't
qualified for second base.
He's always hit above 300 at every stop he's been. He's batted 300. He's power and speed, not elite at either, but enough to be a 2020 kind of guy. He's going to hit in that lineup with Freddie Freeman around him and Mookie Betts around him and JD Martinez around him. And I just think it could be fun to watch. But I think value-wise, I'm thinking because Mookie Betts is a first-round pick, maybe.
Well, I'm just saying. Listen, the drill today is fantasy players on each team, which this has the biggest impact.
You give the obvious choice. I'll give one.
Well, that's fine. There's no right. The answer. This is all subjective. This isn't like whatever I say doesn't mean it. I'm right. I mean, I'm just giving you my players.
You're writing it all down, and then you're gonna shame me when I'm wrong later.
No, of course I shame you. I shame everybody. So I saved the best for last. This is the game that Casey's going to be watching with his whole family. He'll catch every pitch, I'm sure, on opening day. The game comes on at 4:10 his time. It's the Pittsburgh Pirates in Cincinnati. I know Casey's excited. I can tell. Pittsburgh-wise, I like Reynolds, but I like O'Neal Cruz. I love this kid. Shortstop, 6'6".
Oh, yeah.
Throw the ball 100 miles an hour to first base. I love it. I love this guy. I really do. I mean, if he was on a better team, I would draft him higher. He's just on a mediocre, on a bad team, I guess. I hate saying that.
He's on that short list of players you would pay to watch play because he's like unicorn. He's like huge playing shortstop. He dwarfs over everybody else, but yet he has the range, the footwork, the speed of these littler, quicker players. So yeah, I agree with you. He's the one I would want most for fantasy purposes on Pittsburgh.
And I love watching this kid play. And then let's talk about my favorite team, the Cincinnati Reds, who it's a youth movement. So that's what I'm telling people, because it's hard for me to even explain who the players are on the team right now, except for Jonathan India. I'll go with, I like Freely. He's probably DH a lot. I think he'll have the most impact fantasy wise. I wish I could say somebody else. I like the starting pitcher they have, like Lozia.
Lodolo. Nick Lodolo.
Nick Lodolo to me is a real ace. I mean, this guy is 25 years old and he has a live arm and he's really good. But again, I think Jonathan India is going to have a pretty good year, but just impact wise, I think Fraley's going to have the best year out of all the hitters in Cincinnati. Who do you like?
The best year out of all the hitters.
We have Will Myers. Joey Votto says he's healthy.
I think Stevenson, the catcher, might have the best year offensively for Cincinnati. He's a good ball player. He's on a bad team, but he's a good ball player. So, but I also like, you talked about Nick Lodolo. Everybody talks about Hunter Green. I'm going to name their number 3 starter, the guy who has a 100-mile-an-hour cutter in his back pocket, and that's Graham Ashcraft. This guy can just mow people down and break bats after bats. And you can get him. You might even be able to pick him up after the draft. People don't draft him. I wouldn't start him at home because I think you can bunt a home run in Great American Ballpark, but he's a guy who I would keep an eye on because I think his numbers could be like, I don't think it's out of the realm of bold predictions to say he represents Cincinnati at the All-Star game in July.
No, he pitched last year for the Reds in Kasey. He had some really good games. I mean, his ERA was under 3 at one time, and he pitched really well, and he has some great stuff. So, yeah, I mean, the Reds, as much as I'm upset they haven't really done anything with free agents, I mean, it's a youth movement, and we'll see what happens. I mean, you never know. But, the chips are down, and we'll see if these guys can make a name for themselves. It should be interesting. I haven't seen in my history of a Reds fan, I've never seen so many young ball players on a roster in their history ever.
Yeah.
They always have a couple like older guys, more tested, but if Votto doesn't play, I mean, their whole lineup is I think close to under 28, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Should be fun, but those are all the games for Thursday. I mean, it should be fun. I like opening day. ESPN and MLB Network will all be covering a lot of stuff. Before I leave, I want your prediction. A's, Oakland. How many people will be in Oakland to watch the opening day?
2,680.
You think 2,000?
What do you think?
I say 7,500.
I was trying to be. I would probably say between 6,000 and 8,000. Yeah, that's it. I was trying to be obnoxious.
I feel they have to move to Vegas. I think that's an option they have to do. I mean, the fan support there is way low because they're not building a new stadium. They're not doing that. There's no fan support at all in Oakland. They have nobody on the team that no one cares about. There's no one player that people are wearing their jerseys anymore. I mean, it should be a long season. I feel bad for the fans. I mean, it's just bad. It's bad for baseball. Okay, well, I'm Ross the Boss. That's Kasey, Vlad to the Bone, Scheinfeld. We are excited. Opening day on Thursday, not Friday, Thursday. And it's going to be a lot of pitcher duels. I'm excited. It's going to be great. Watch us on Thursday, 1 o'clock, Kasey, or 1:30?
1:30 West, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern.
And we'll talk more baseball. We'll talk more sports. We'll talk about football. Hey, Kaylee, we'll talk about everything you guys want to talk about on Thursday. I'm curious to see where Aaron Rodgers signed. I'm curious to see what happens with Lamar Jackson. I think those answers will be ready to go on Thursday. We'll see what happens. I'm Ross the Boss. Kasey, say goodbye.
Ross, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to talking to you again on Thursday. Goodbye, everybody.